As we all know, the Star Wars sequels are chock full of terrible scenes that make any self-respecting Star Wars fans' blood boil. It's almost like these three movies competed with each other to see which movie could have more awful moments. Although, admittedly, Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker did have way more terrible moments than The Force Awakens. I mean, those two were some bad movies. Anyway, in this video, I'm going to go over the 5 worst scenes that I could think of in the Star Wars sequels and why they're so bad. This list is in no particular order, all of these scenes are terrible, but if you have any personal opinions on which ones are the worst, just let me know why down in the comments. Without further ado, let's get into it. And coming up at number 5, we're starting off with the classic, the infamous, somehow Palpatine returned. Listen, every enjoyer of cinema hates shoddy reasoning. We hate when we watch a movie and something is off or doesn't quite make sense or is explained poorly. And nowhere is a bigger crime committed than with this scene in The Rise of Skywalker. Remember, Palpatine was killed 30 years ago by Darth Vader in a move that was foretold in an ancient prophecy. Not only was he just casually killed in a tragically timed jaywalking attempt, he was picked up by Darth Vader and thrown down a 1,000-foot pit in a Death Star that was actively blowing up. So he was dead. But then, in The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson killed off Supreme Leader Snoke, which, believe me, was a terrible decision that we'll talk about some other time. And in his absence, they realized they needed a big bad guy to really give the movie some stakes. And thus, they needed Palpatine to come back. Which brings us to maybe the most infamous line from any Star Wars movie, maybe even more than I don't like sand. And that is...
Somehow Palpatine returned.
You're telling me you can't think of a single better reason for Palpatine coming back and saying somehow, and then, a line maybe a little later on talking about, oh, well, the Sith had some dark magic, maybe it was that. You can't think of a single better reason? Why? How? You get paid millions of dollars. How is this so hard? Also, this isn't directly related to the scene, but let's not forget that one of the ways they announced this prior to the movie being released was in a Fortnite event. I mean, canonically, this announcement was given to the world in a game of Fortnite. I mean, how can you possibly decide that that's the best decision for the Star Wars franchise? There's no explanation. Where is the thought? This scene exemplifies the problems with the sequel trilogy. Coming up next, we have another scene from The Rise of Skywalker, and that's a scene I've talked about on this channel before, which is none other than the dagger of plot convenience. Basically, our merry band of heroes, which is like Rey, Poe, C-3PO, BB-8, and Finn, maybe one more person, spend the entire movie searching for an ancient Sith dagger, because they think, correctly to be fair, that the dagger will somehow lead them to an ancient Sith planet of Exegol that can only be found with a wayfinder, and only 2 of those exist. I know, that's probably so confusing. I'm sure you've watched the movies, but even so, you're probably confused. That's not my fault. These movies are just terribly written. To find one of those 2 wayfinders to lead them to the Sith planet that can only be found with the wayfinder, they need the dagger to lead them to the wayfinder, because it just wasn't complicated enough, boys. It was just a little too easy to understand earlier. Once they do find the dagger, they take it to some random planet where the ruins of the second Death Star crashed and landed like 30 years ago. And while they're there, Rey and Poe Dameron and them are like, golly, we'll never find the wayfinder and all of that. And then all of a sudden, Rey has this wonderful idea. She pulls out the mystical dagger and holds it up to the ruins of the Death Star. And lo and behold, the dagger somehow matches up directly with the ruins, pointing to exactly where our heroes need to go to find the wayfinder. Canonically, the amount of stars that would have needed to align for this to happen is actually staggering. I mean, if Rey was standing in any other spot, or holding the dagger in her other hand, or if the destroyed wreckage that had been exposed to a roaring ocean for the last 3 decades has shifted at all, then it never would have pointed to where she needed to go. Like I mentioned earlier, I actually made a whole video about just that scene and why it's so bad, going into way more detail, and if you want to check that out, I highly recommend you do it after you finish this video. It's a good watch. And if these kind of videos interest you at all, or you're just a Star Wars fan, then smash that subscribe button. I know you like the videos. Come on, there's no reason not to do it. Helps me out, helps you out, you get good content, I get a subscriber. It's a win-win. Just hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. And now let's move on to number 3. At number 3, we have one of the few scenes from The Force Awakens, because like I mentioned earlier, even though Force Awakens is by no means a good Star Wars movie, it's far better than the second 2 sequels. But the scene that I'm talking about is none other than Han Solo's death. And now, I know some of you are going to be out there saying things like, but Jedwerd, Han Solo wanted to die. Sorry, Harrison Ford wanted to die. He wanted Han Solo to get killed off. It was the only way he came back. Yeah, I get it. I know. But that's not an excuse. Harrison Ford's desire for Han Solo's death does not mean you have to tear Han Solo's character down to a loser divorced dad flying around in the Millennium Falcon with Chewie, smoking pot like Cheech and Chong. And it certainly doesn't mean that you have to have Han Solo get gutted through the stomach by his weird, edgy, emo son. To me, this scene is just disrespectful. It's not a good end for Han Solo's character, it's totally out of the blue, and it clearly just exists to get rid of Han Solo once and for all. It's a terrible end for one of the coolest characters in cinema. Now, credit where credit is due, in The Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams tried to give him a little bit more of a send-off by having a weird imaginary version of Han Solo talk to Kylo Ren about doing the right thing and whatnot, but the genie's not going back in the bottle. You killed him off in a really unsatisfying way that did not feel like a fulfilling end to his character arc or a meaningful end to his character in general, and that's on you. I truly believe that there are ways that this could have been done that would still have been consistent to Han Solo's character. Maybe Han Solo sacrifices himself to blow up Starkiller Base. Maybe he dies holding off a ton of stormtroopers in a final blaze of glory with Chewie by his side. I don't entirely know. I'm not a writer, and I certainly didn't write this movie. I just think there are ways that it could have been done better. Getting gutted with a lightsaber by his own son in a surprise move is rushed, it's forced, and it's not faithful to Han Solo's character or a fitting end to his arc. A very disappointing scene in my opinion. And speaking of his son, Kylo Ren, this next scene is directly tied to him as well, only this scene is once again from The Rise of Skywalker. Man, this movie is the gift that keeps on giving, just terrible scene after terrible scene. Regardless, this scene is the Kylo Ren and Rey kiss, the Reylo kiss if you will. Now, there's no doubt at all that these two characters did have a connection that was showed to us through their weird Force dyad and the fact that they kept having these weird space Zoom calls across the galaxy. However, not for a second did it seem like these guys were in love. Not for a second did it seem like they had a romantic relationship, and not for a second did it seem like they needed to make out at the end of the movie. I mean, heck, for like every movie in the sequel trilogy, these two characters would be nice to each other for one scene and then start fighting in the next. I mean, look at The Last Jedi. They talk in Luke's hut, and then Kylo Ren arrests Rey. But then they fight the Royal Guards together. But then they split the lightsaber in half and fight each other, and it goes on and on and on. They're constantly friends again, enemies again, friends again, enemies, and it just doesn't end. It just doesn't end. It just kind of felt like the movie was coming to an end and they wanted a Han Leia confessing their love style moment to finish off The Rise of Skywalker. To me, this theme kind of epitomizes a deeper one that we see in the entire sequel trilogy, and that's kind of a do things just to fill the generic sci-fi trope. We need a powerful female heroine. We need the conflicted villain who turns good in the end. We need a hero who struggles between the light and the dark side. And of course, we need a love story. That's kind of just like the general vibe I get from the sequel trilogy, is like doing things just for the sake of doing them, not because they work in the story. And this love plotline feels just like that. Terrible scene, not fitting, doesn't match the vibe of these two characters or fit the ending of the movie at all really, because Kylo Ren dies, and again, they didn't have a build up to their love or whatever. Just bad scene. Finally, we're on to the last scene for this video, and it's gonna be a big one of the worst scenes in all the sequels in my opinion. But just so you know, this topic is big enough that I'm gonna have a part 2 to this video coming out very soon with another 5 of the worst scenes in the sequel trilogy. So if you're watching this within a few days of me posting it, then be on the lookout for that. And if you're watching this video, say a week or so after I released it, then I'll have a part 2 on screen right after I go over scene number 5. So stick around for that. But at number 5, we have one of the most notorious scenes from the Star Wars sequels. A scene that is iconic for how out of place it is, how disrespectful it is to the legacy of one of the most iconic characters in all of film, and shows just how far these movies have fallen. And that scene is none other than Luke drinking the green alien milk on the planet he's exiled himself to. Now, on its face, this scene may not seem that bad, but it just shows how far Rian Johnson wanted to drag down Luke Skywalker. No longer is he the hopeful, caring, motivated figure that we all remember him being in the original trilogy. Now he's just a crabby, grumpy old man who doesn't care at all and gave up because he made one mistake. Instead of going back to help his friends and fight the evil that has risen, Luke would rather spend his time drinking green alien milk in the middle of bumfrick nowhere. It gets even worse when you realize that this scene comes right after the scene where Luke learns that Han died. And instead of showing a scene where he grieves his friend or even acknowledges his death, they decide it's more important to show Luke drinking that green alien milk. It's just disrespectful to the legacy of Luke Skywalker, which is a trend that we see in these movies quite a lot, unfortunately. I mean, guys, the sequel trilogy sucks. What more do you want? It sucks. There's so many bad scenes, it's just a mess. And if you want to see some more of the worst scenes in the sequel trilogy in Star Wars, then you need to watch this video right here, boys. I mean, it's so good. I know you'll enjoy it. If you enjoyed this one, be sure to check it out. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. See you later. Bye.